Yo, 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 yo. How's it going, fam? You know we had to come back for another one. You know we had to get it in for one more sesh, right? So yeah, as promised, we're back with another one. And I just hope the fams out there doing well. I hope the tribe, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's vibing right. I hope your energy is very positive, magnetic, you know, bringing others around you and keeping your family close. You know what I mean? Paying attention to all the signs. You're not just sitting there, you know, taking up space. You're actually applying what you learn, right? Shout out to the tribe, Israel. Israel, shout out to the tribe. My autochtons, my indigenous aborigines, copper colored races of Americas, and joining islands, right? Shout out to all the fam, man. Shout out to the fam everywhere, all across the plane. Everybody tuning in. If you're listening to wherever your spot is in the world, right? On the earth, right? What's going on, yo? I'm doing good. I hope you enjoying your Shabbat, right? Relaxing. That's right. But at the same time, I hope you're getting tired of your pillow. I hope you're coming up off your sleep, man. I hope you're ready to wake up. I hope you know that you've been asleep a long time. But it's alright. So if your vision is clear, you know, you're starting to get that clarity back, you're ready to see again, I got something to show you, fam. Alright? So once again, I hope the fam's doing well, you know. Much love, much hive out there to everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get into it. Alright? And if you remember, we left off here, right? And we was dealing with these cats, right? And I told you we was gonna start this new series, the Nomad, the Wanderlust of Capricorn. This is part 1. So yeah, if you remember, we were talking about this land here, right? As you see in this picture. And when we hit the X, right, it lets us know that we're in the land of Nod, right? And the land of Nod is where Cain was exiled by the Most High after Cain murdered his brother Abel. And so he was sent to the land of Nod. Now on the last presentation, we were touching on it meaning to fall asleep. But for part 1 in this series, we're gonna focus on the root, right? The root of it, which means to wonder, right? So when we dig to the root leads us to the word wander. So the root of Nod means to wander. It says, therefore, to dwell in the land of Nod, usually taken to mean that one takes up a wandering life. So the people of Nod just wander around, right? And as you look in the back, you see what looks to be like sand, right? See, they got the dog right there, right? And they got that deer. You see how he's holding the deer right here? All right. And then there's some more deer right here, right? And it seems like he got this big old stick, right? And you see how they're holding everybody up? And some more dead animal, right? So yeah, talking about the land of Cain, right? And this is where the Most High exiled him to, right? So yeah, as we're talking about wander, right? And how they took up the wandering life, alright? So as we look at the etymology for nomad, it tells us that they're a wandering group of Arabia, literally meaning roaming and roving and wandering to find pastures for flocks or herds. Pasture, pasturage, grazing, literally land allotted. To divide, distribute, allot. Roaming, roving, wandering. Wandering. Right? And it said that it means to wander. That nod means to wonder in the origin. So let's continue to dig on nomad, right? And it says it means one that roams for pasture, and that they're a pastoral tribe, right? A pastoral tribe. It says that is a member of a community of people who live in different locations, moving from one place to another. It says among the various nomad, or the various ways nomads relate to their environment, one can distinguish the hunter-gatherer, the pastoral nomad owning livestock, or the modern peripatetic nomad, alright? The peripatetic nomad. So there's three types. Alright? And these different types of nomads are, you know, would create this nomad community. It says nomad hunting and gathering following seasonally available, alright? So they have to follow the seasons and when it makes the plants available for them to, you know, select, right? So it says following seasonally available wild plants and game is by far the oldest human sustenance method. Alright? It says pastoralists graze herds, driving them or moving with them. Alright? In patterns that normally avoid depleting pastures beyond their ability to recover. It says that nomadism is also a lifestyle adapted to infertile regions. Infertile regions, right? Let's check that out real quick, right? Fertile, right? We just want to check it out, right? It says unable to produce, unable to sustain crops or vegetation, sterile or barren, unproductive. All right. So it said nomadism is also a lifestyle adapted to infertile regions such as steppe, tundra, or ice and sand, where mobility is the most efficient strategy for exploiting scarce resources. For example, many groups in the tundra are reindeer herders and are semi-nomadic, following forage for their animals. These nomads sometimes adapt the use of high technologies such as solar photovoltaics to reduce their dependence on diesel fuel. Alright. So it says nomadism is also a lifestyle adapted to infertile regions. Alright. And they give us an example, right? It's just wide out in the open. Alright, nothing really to work with, no vegetation. Alright. So that's what they give us for nomad, right? Meaning one that roams around for pasture, right? And in the land of Nod, they were known to take up a wandering life, right? So they walked around looking for pasture, right? And they owned livestock, right? So let's check out pasture. It says pasture, from the Latin pastus, is to feed, right? So it says that the land is used for grazing. It says pasture lands in the narrow sense are enclosed tracts of farmland grazed by domesticated livestock such as horses, cattle, sheep, or swine. The vegetation of tended pasture forage consists mainly of grasses with an interspersion of legumes and other forbs, which are non-grass herbaceous plants. Pasture is typically grazed throughout the summer, in contrast to meadows, which is ungrazed or used for grazing only after being mown to make hay for animal fodder. Pasture in a wider sense additionally includes rangelands, other enclosed pastoral systems, and land types used by wild animals for grazing and browsing. Right? And then they show you an example of something like this, where you just have not too much greenery, but just enough for the cows to chew on and eat. Alright? And it means to feed. It's a land used for grazing. Right? It says examples of pasture habitats, right? Grassland, heathland, right? Moorland, right? Prairie, steppes, wood pastures, right? This is a snowy pasture in Italy. So as you can see, the land is infertile, right? Unable to produce, unable to sustain crops or vegetation, right? Oh, snap. So these are examples, right? And we're talking about nomads, right? Who wander, right? To find pastures, right? So basically, those that are nomads, right? They have to follow the animal, right? They move with the animal. Right? So they live with them. Nomads are the tribes that live with their animals, right? Side by side. Right? Another example of pasteurized land, right? I mean, your milk is pasteurized, right? So, yeah, let's move forward. We got the shepherd, right? It says a shepherd or a sheep herder, right? And we read that that's what they do, right? Herds, right? To find pastures for flocks and herds, right? So a sheep herder is a person who tends herds, feeds, or guards herds of sheep, right? And pasture, right? It said that it was grazed by domesticated livestock, such as horses, cattle, and sheep, right? So we're digging on a shepherd, which is a herder, right? And check out herder, right? The livestock, right? They got goats, right? Alright, so let's see what else we got. Alright. Alright, so this is a cave, right? It says sheep herding, or shepherding, I'm sorry. Shepherding is among the oldest occupations beginning some 5,000 years ago in Asia Minor. Sheep were kept for their milk, meat, and especially their wool. Alright, for those main three things, right? It says over the next thousands of years, sheep and shepherding spread throughout Eurasia. Alright. So it has some origin or some beginnings in Asia Minor, and then it spread out very slowly throughout thousands of years to Eurasia, right? And we're talking about shepherding, right? Attending pastures, right? Cattle, right? Alright, so check out herder. says a herder is a worker who lives a possibly semi-nomadic life, caring for various domestic animals in places where these animals wander pasture lands. Again, we were digging on what? The land of Nod, meaning the wandering life. So these animals seem to wander, and it's the people that follow them, right? It says usually if the person is a minor, he is called herd boy. A male herder is also called herdsman, and a female herder, by contrast, is also called a herdswoman. Because their work is necessarily mostly outdoors, they move around from place to place in the course of their labors. The possibility exists that the lands upon which their beasts graze are not claimed as any single person's property. So these nomadic herders and shepherds have no property, because they only exist upon the land which their beasts graze. Alright, so this is herding, this is shepherding, right? But they're attached to the animal, to the domesticated animal. Possibility exists that the lands upon which their beasts graze are not claimed as any single person's property. Alright, so these people are nomads that migrate, roam, and move around a lot, while they care for domesticated animals who wander the pasture lands. Again, we're talking about what? The land of Nod, where Cain was exiled by the Most High. Nomad means what? To wander, to roam and rove, to find pastures for flocks and herds. Alright? Wander. Move about aimlessly. Move about aimlessly. Wander. To roam about. To wander, a variant form of the root represented in Old High German. To walk around, right? To wander. It also means to turn, wind, weave. You see why we connected? You see why I had to do this series for y'all? So we're talking about wandering, right? We're talking about nomads, right? Nomad means to wander, right? To rove. So we're dealing with wander, right? And because this is what we're dealing with, I was led to this term, right? Wanderlust. It says wanderlust is a strong desire or impulse to wander or travel and explore the world. It says the English loan word wanderlust was already extant in the German language, dating as far back as Middle High German. Alright? It said that it was also known as the wanderbird, right? So yeah, hold on, fam. Alright, fam, my bad. But yeah, so they're talking about the wanderbird, right? And also they said that the term originates from the words wandering, which means to hike, right? And lust, which means desire. So it says it does not mean to wander, but to hike. Now that should ring bells, right? Because who do you always hear talking about they're excited to go hiking? Who's always talking about road trips? Alright? Keep that in mind, fam. Desire to travel, right? The desire to travel. So wanderlust is the lust or desire to wander. The lust to wander. Right? So it's a blood thing, right? It's in their DNA, right? To be nomadic, right? To wander. I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? We're talking about nomads, right? We're talking about land of Nod, right? We're talking about people who are shepherds, right? Who have to move where their animals move. Who basically have no claims to property, because the lands which their beasts graze are not to be claimed. So they move along with their beasts, right? Wanderlust, right? Alright, so this is the Wanderbird. See, they said the Wanderbird, right? And this is Wanderbird. Now this should ring bells, right, fam? I mean, they telling us all this slavery detail with ships and boats, right? I mean, we know they came on boats. Right? Wanderlust, right? The lust to wander, right? And it said the custom of the wanderbird. Right? Wanderbird. Right? Yeah, so we see how this can connect to the travel, right? And to them popping up on other people's lands, right? For their lust to wander, right? As nomads, right? In the land of Nod, right? Alright. So, they were saying that, wander means to wind, right? Verb 1, right? So we go to verb 1, right? It says move by turning and twisting. To turn, twist, play, curl, brandish, swing. Right? And it says to turn, to wind, to weave, right? To twist, plait, weave. And then it says wind, right? To wander. To twine, entwine. To turn a twist round and round, meaning to set a watch, clockwork. Alright? Wind, right? But it's taken from the word wind, right? Which means to blow, right? To be of a storm. Right? So, we're digging on the history of domestic sheep. Since, these guys herd sheep, right? On the pasture. So it says the history of domesticated sheep goes back to between 11,000 and 9,000 BC. And it says, and the domestication of the wild mouflon in ancient Mesopotamia. Sheep are among the first animals to have been domesticated by humans, and there is evidence of sheep farming and Iranian statuary dating to that time period. These sheep were primarily raised for meat, milk, and skins. Woolly sheep began to develop around 6000 BC in Iran, and cultures such as the Persians relied on sheep's wool for trading. They were then imported to Africa and Europe via trading. Right? It says the domestication of the wild mouflon, right? Or flan, whatever that term is, right? And it's talking about the domestication of sheep. It says the wild ancestors. The exact line of descent between domesticated sheep and their wild ancestors is unclear. The most common hypothesis states that the Ovis aries is descended from the Asiatic species of the mouflon, right? Which is this. Which some would call a ram, right? But this is actually the wild version of the sheep. See, most of y'all don't know that the sheep's a hybrid. And because you don't know the sheep's a hybrid, you don't understand that when these religious teachers try to address to you as the so-called children of the Most High, right? As sheep. And I mean, Yeah. Sheep's a hybrid, fam. And if the sheep was to be the first domesticated animal, what does that make you? Domesticated, right? As a U.S. citizen, right? But y'all think this is a game. Y'all think this is play, right? It's talking about the wild sheep. It says it has been proposed that the European Mouflon is an ancient breed of domestic sheep turned feral rather than an ancestor, despite its commonly being cited as ancestor in past literature. A few breeds of sheep, such as the Castle Milk Moor-it from Scotland, were formed through crossbreeding with wild European Mouflon. Says domestication. Sheep were among the first animals to be domesticated by humankind. Although the domestication of dogs may be over 20,000 years old, or earlier, it says, although domestication of dogs may be over 20,000 years earlier, the domestication date is estimated to fall between 11,000 and 9,000 BC. So it's crazy, fam, because from the last presentation, right? Or when we were actually dealing with the weave, right? And the locks, right? And we were dealing with the warp clothing, right? Do you know, as the indigenous copper colored races, right? As the autochthon, as the real children of Israel, during this same time, you were developing clothing. You were making Levitical biblical clothing, textiles, creating fabric. And these guys were stuck domesticating dogs and sheep in infertile lands and caves. Come on, man. You know, we got it right here, right? That it started in Asia, right? And that they were kept solely for meat, milk, and skins. I'm talking about domestication of animals. So, if you go to church, right? And these religious teachers tell you you are of the flock, fam, we looking at domestication 101. Right? Through this nomadic lifestyle. This is the Mouflon, right? It says it is a subspecies of the wild goat. The wild sheep. I'm sorry. The wild sheep. Right? So this is the real sheep, right? And we've been conditioned into accepting the hybrid. Alright? See this? Right? Says animal husbandry is the management and care of farm animals by human beings, in which genetic qualities and behavior considered to be advantageous to humans are further developed. The term can refer to the practice of selective breeding and raising livestock to promote desirable traits in animals for utility, sport, pleasure, or research. It says, animal husbandry has been practiced for thousands of years since the first domestication of animals. We're talking about animal husbandry, fam. Right? And if you put the two together, they're married. The husband is married to the animal. They go wherever the animal go. They have to move where the animal moves. The animal dictates what happens. So again, fam, if we're from Africa, how come our land didn't look like this? Right? These so-called natives, right? They didn't immigrate from a land that was of green, right? They didn't leave somewhere that was beautiful and came into your spot, right? How come it don't look like this over here in America, right? Where they found the indigenous copper-colored races. It didn't look like this. Animal husbandry. See him? He's a husband to his animals. Right? He's a husband to his animals, right? Animal husbandry, right? They say it's been practiced for thousands of years since the first domestication of animals. Alright, so in the Neanderthal, the Nephilim New Man series, right? In part 1, right? We learned that they domesticated the dog in the cave, right? We even learned that Caesar Milan was trying to what? Restore the dog's reputation. Right? He was rehabilitating the dog. Yeah, alright. But we're talking about nomads, right? We're talking about sheep and wild sheep, right? In pastures and herds and flocks and cattle, right? And the roaming about, right? We're talking about the land of Nod, right? So we're talking about the unionship of man and animal. I mean, this is the practice, man, right here, right? Given it to us in the form of nomadism, right? Sheep. Says it is of unknown origin. They use land, right? With no known cognates outside of Germanic. The more usual Indo-European word for the animal is represented in English by ewe. Ewe, right? An ewe, right? Female sheep. Sheep, right? It's funny how they had no definition, right, in their language, but in English they have, you know, some breakdown, right? Flock of sheep, right? Sheep, right? Then it tells us hind. And ewes and hind. Oh, what's a hind? Let's find out. Hind. Female deer. Says hornless. Young deer, gazelle, right? Young deer, gazelle. Young deer, gazelle. So when we're looking at the land of Nod, this looks like deer, doesn't it? That looks like deer, right? This is deer, right? The hooves, right? And this is their dog, right? They got the kids with their beast, right? Red hair, right? And the source. Right? So we're talking about the hind, right? Female deer, right? Or a gazelle, right? A gazelle. A gazelle, right? It says ultimately from North Africa. Right? Oops. This is what I was going to show y'all real quick. From hind, right? It says female deer, right? Hind, right? Now, hind is the main word in Hindu. Right? Hind is the main word in Hindu. It says Indian, right? From hind. India. It says river, right? Meaning here the Indus hence region of the Indus. The sense then gradually became more extended by invading peoples to encompass all northern India. Properly, one of the native race in India descended from the Aryan conquerors. It says more loosely, the name includes also the non-Aryan inhabitants of India. It says the Hindu Kush mountain range is said to mean literally Indian killer. Does it make sense to you now, fam? If hind is the gazelle, right? And the gazelle is the young deer, right? And this is them with the deer, right, fam? I mean, we're talking about the land of Nod, right, fam? We're talking about Cain, right, fam? We're talking about nomads who find pastures for flocks and herds, who call you sheep. Are you asleep, Israel? Sons of Jacob, daughters of Sarah, are you asleep? Are you the sheep? I don't think so. I think we're the Aboriginals, right? The autochthon, right? The Indigenous, right? The original American, right? The copper color race, right? The paleo, right? The paleo, right? Like as in the paleo Hebrew, right? That only Israelites had connections to. Hind, right? Gazelle, Hindu, Indian killer. So they want to say that Indian, right? Hind comes from India, right? That's the breakdown they want to give us, right? So let's see what happens when we break down India for ourselves, right? Indian, an inhabitant of India or South Asia pertaining to India. It says applied to the Aboriginal native inhabitants of the Americas from at least 1553, reflecting Spanish and Portuguese use on the mistaken notion that America was the eastern end of Asia. Of the inhabitants of the Philippines and indigenous peoples of Australia and New Zealand. Indish. It says nothing here about no Hindu, fam. I don't see Hindu Kush nowhere, fam. So we don't get the Hindu breakdown on the etymon, right? The etymology on Indian, right? So let's see if we get it from India, right? It says the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, south of the Himalayas. Formerly sometimes used generally for Asia. So India was generally used for Asia, right? And they call you the Afro-Asiatic, right? So-called Negro. And they found a bunch of Indians here, right? copper-colored races, right, in America, right? And we know we're not African, right? Hell yeah, we know we're not African, right? Specifically in reference to the Republic of India, Old English India, region of the Indus River, later used of the region beyond it, from Indos, Indus River, also in Indian, right? Then it says, Old Persian Hindu, right? The name for the province of Sind, right? From the Sindhu River. It just means river, right? Indies. So Hindu means Indian killer, right? That's what they were saying. Did I exit? Right? That's what they want to say, right? Just gotta let y'all, think about that. So we're talking about Asia, right? We're talking about river, right? We're talking about the Indus Valley, river, right? Indian. Alright. So, I was digging up the Hindu, right? And, we were over here with that, where is it? The animal husbandry, right? And we were talking about how they kept sheep in ancient Mesopotamia, right? So I knew a little something that struck close, and I decided to put in some goat deity stuff, right? Dealing with Mesopotamia. And I came across this site, right? And as you can see, right, it had this little drop right here. It says in ancient Babylonian, the goat fish, right, was known as Ea, known to the Greeks as Oannes, right, whose upper body was that of a man, whose lower body was that of a fish. He passed the day with man, spent the night under the sea. Oannes gave humans insight into language, the science and arts. He taught him how to construct cities, temples, and gave them laws and knowledge of such things as geometry. He taught them to distinguish between different seeds and how to collect fruits, and instructed them on how to become civilized and refined. It is said that once his job was done, he returned to the sea and returned just 4 more times, each time to bring a new level of civilization and advancement to the so-called human race. Says his job was to educate mankind and then retreat, and it is said that Oannes taught Homo sapiens everything there was to being human. It wasn't until later times that Oannes began to be associated with the god Pan. For Oannes is Pan in his ancient form, one important aspect of the constellation of Capricorn is that it is one of the two gates of the gods. These gates are where the Milky Way and Zodiac intersect. Souls are said to ascend after death through the gate of Capricorn to return to the gate of, or to return through the gate of Cancer. Goatfish, right? And we're talking about Hindu, right? From hind, right? Hind meaning a female deer, a young deer, gazelle. To be hornless, right? And they said that this was a goat fish. Alright? Before we go there, right? Let me show you these. Because this is that goatfish that they're talking about. You see the feet? Right? And remember, they told you they couldn't tell you the origin between the sheep and where it branched off. Right? This is this pan goat, this goatfish. Right? This character. Alright. Goatfish, right? And their depictions of such. Right? Said goatfish, right? So I came across this article, right? And it says that Japan, right, was one of the goat-legged pains. When the gods fled from the monster Typhus, right, and hid themselves in animal forms, Agapan assumed the form of the fish-tailed goat. He later came to the aid of Zeus, stealing back the god's severed sinews from the giant. As a reward for his service, Agapan was replaced among the stars as the constellation Capricorn. His name means all goat or all stormy. Agapan is often identified with Pan, but in at least one Athenian vase painting, the two appear side by side as distinct divinities in the retomb of Dionysos, right? It says that he is the goat Pan, right? But I saw this right here, right, fam? And I saw the AE together, and the GI pan, right? And I said, damn, is it me, or does this look like Egypt? The spelling looks like Egyptian, right? Like, doesn't this look like it says Egyptian? It's similar, right? So I tested it out, and before I go there though, fam, I want y'all to check this out, because when you put in this, right, these are the pics we just checked out, but once you go past a certain limit, this is what you get. Right? And I saw this, and it said Libyan, Satyr, and what to me seems like Egyptian. Right? So it just made me think, fam. Right? Let me show you this real quick. Egyptian, right? Egyptians, right? Dealing with the terminology, that's why I brought y'all here, right? Egyptian, right? I don't know, fam. Y'all tell me what y'all think, right? Right? And this thing right here, right? So yeah, fam, as we ride out, right? Pastor, which means shepherd, and means to lead to pasture, to set grazing, cause to eat. Alright? And we see here the descendants of Cain eat their pasture. Here it says set to grazing, cause to eat. Pastor, who is also referred to as what? Shepherd. Yeah, my bad, fam. Had a slight intermission, but yeah, anyways, we was last touching upon the pastor, right? So I want to show y'all something, because your pastor hasn't, right? Your pastor hasn't taught you none of this, and he's not going to, right? because a pastor is something that's meant to eat, right? That causes to eat, right? Calls to eat, right? So yeah, we gonna go ahead and look at something, right? Something that your pastor's not gonna show you. Right? Again, shout out to the tribe. Shout out to the fans. Shout out to everybody pushing that indigenous truth. It's amazing, man. It feels good. Most definitely. The effect is mad real, you know. And we just seeing the growth, you know. Do your part. Do what you gotta do. Alright? Fair use, right? Just so they know. And we're gonna get into it, right? And yeah, fam, we're gonna come back in a minute. Just let everybody enjoy. And yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and click this. And we're gonna come over here. We're gonna check it out. Now, we've seen this before, right? We've seen this before, right? And you've seen the fish, right? You saw the fishes. Alright. Alright, so, yeah, that was that one, right? The Mata, the Berber family, alright? So, I'm gonna check one more before we ride out. One more. Fair use. And, we're gonna hop into that, right? As we, damn, this shit just hopped in out of nowhere. My bad, fam. But, yeah, hold on. Right. Alright, so let's jump into it. And again, I hope y'all found it informative. You know what I'm saying? And make sure y'all continue to vibrate. And always remember to choose the creator. It's the only choice you should be making when you choose anything. You know what I mean? This is for you, to the tribe, Israel, to everybody spreading that indigenous truth, waking up to the fact, alright? So we're gonna ride out just like this, and see y'all again soon.
People's daily struggle to survive in an empty and hospitable land. In this documentary, we will travel to the heart of the Western Sahara, the last remaining unexplored region of the Great African Desert. We'll meet the nomads that inhabit this land, learn about their fascinating customs, their atavistic rites, the birthplace of an ancient empire. In this documentary, we will travel to the heart of the Western Sahara, the last remaining unexplored region of the Great African Desert. this land, learn about their fascinating customs, their atavistic rites, the birthplace of an ancient empire. They are the Ulad el-Mithna, the children of the cloud. The immense desert which comprises the Western Sahara, almost 250,000 kilometers in size, is one of the least known and most hostile regions in the world. Part of the Great African Granite Shield, the terrain is frequently interrupted by abrupt elevations, the remains of ancient volcanic chimneys and cones, which left behind solidified flows of basalt rock, giving these buttes their characteristic black color. The granite outcrops of the original land formations suffer the continuous bombardment of particles of sand transported by the sirocco, called Erifi, which in time has modeled the rocks into strange, fantastic shapes. The relief of this land, essentially a vast plain, is sharply interrupted by clusters of mountains. Erosion due to the effect of thermoclasia has caused the surface layer of the mountains to fracture and break apart, making landslides and subsidence a constant threat. The granite massif of Lejuat, known by the desert nomads as the Mountains of the Devil, has given rise to all kinds of legends and superstitions, creating around it a halo of mystery. The great chains of dunes called ergs are the most characteristic feature of the Saharan landscape. Formed by the erosion grain by grain of the rocks, they acquire their characteristic half-moon shape, advancing and constantly transformed by the action of...
Keep in mind, fam, they're trying to say, as the so-called Negro, you come from the Sahara Desert, right? As the nomad, I don't think so, fam. I don't think so.
The wind. Is to all kinds of legends and superstitions, creating around it a halo of mystery. The great chains of dunes called ergs are the most characteristic feature of the Saharan landscape. Formed by the erosion grain by grain of the rocks, they acquire their characteristic half-moon shape, advancing and constantly transformed by the action of the wind. Interminable plateau covered in pebbles called hamadas are battered day and night by the wind. Scorched by the blazing sun, they are one of the most starkly beautiful landscapes of the desert. The main colonies of plant life are concentrated in the wadis, the dried-up river courses. This is in part due to the morning fogs, which form in winter, providing the vegetation with much-needed humidity. The bush species that can be found in the wadis have managed to adapt to the extreme conditions of aridity and evaporation, pushing their roots down deep into the ground until they reach the water table. As the air close to the ground heats up, it gives rise to a strange phenomenon of refraction, causing spectacular mirages to appear on the wide plains. Impossible rivers and lakes rise up in the desert. It here in the Western Sahara. On the Tiris plains, the past praised for their pasture, the ground is parched and cracking, and the cattle are dying. The prolonged drought, which is afflicting this part of the planet, a consequence of the anticyclones which prevent the formation of clouds, is drying out the few wells, vital for the survival of the desert dwellers and their animals. At last, these storms arrive and bring with them the longed-for waters. They are sporadic and fall torrentially, flooding the wadis. In just a few days, pools and wetlands bring renewed life to the dying land. The desert dons a mantle of green. The time of abundance has arrived. Today is an important day for Habiyabi and Fatimatu. They are expecting a very special visit. Their guests, who have come from a great distance, are two old friends, Sipidirahim and Kaloha. This interview was prepared well in advance. The reason is to settle the final details of the marriage, which is to take place between Sugaina, the daughter of the hosts, and Shelef, their friend's son. With the good prospects promised by the recent rains, it has been decided that this marriage, so long postponed, will now take place. After the lengthy ritual greeting, which may last several minutes, at the entrance to the haima they drink the tea and goat's milk which is offered to all the guests. Both men are sheikhs, chiefs of family clans of great repute. In the Western Sahara they are called bitanes. In traditional culture this concept is associated with a man of Arab race who has his own herd of camels and servants to look after them. Given their important social position, the marriage they are arranging will be a great event, celebrated in the traditional manner. After drinking the 3 teas of welcome, the two friends retire to discuss and settle the final details of the marriage. Most important of all is the dowry, which is to be given to the bride's family. It is also a good time to talk about the favorite subject of all nomads, their livestock. Settle the final details of the marriage. Most important of all is the dowry, which is to be given to the bride's family. It is also a good time to talk about the favorite subject of all nomads, their livestock. The recent rains have brought abundant pasture. The herds of dromedaries can spend the entire day chomping on the young shoots of escaf, their favorite food. They need to recover the weight lost during the long drought. Small herds of goats also accompany the nomads of the Sahara. Because it is perfectly adapted to these surroundings, the goat has become one of the main domesticated animals in these regions. The dromedary was introduced into Africa in the 6th century BC, and since then it has become the very essence of the Sahara, earning the name the ship of the desert.